This is Motorsport Radio.
1, 2.
Join the conversation. Contact the show on Twitter, on Facebook, and on our website, Motorsport Radio.
Hello and welcome. It's the Superbike Show. We are back again. This is Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester and we are live this Wednesday evening. Yes, it's Lester, Luke and Lewis on the show here tonight. Good evening, guys. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thanks, Lester. How are you?
I'm also okay. Yes, not too bad. Yeah, and Lewis Ray is here as well. Back on the show again. Good evening, Lewis.
Good evening. It's good to be here once again. And this week we got the Triple L's, Leicester, Luke and Lewis.
Wow. Yeah. There you go. Lewis Ray can be heard on television now. Commentator for Fab Racing. Be heard on Sky Sports. No, that's not right. Just on Sky. It's on Sporty Stuff TV channel on Sky. Not quite yet, Sky Sports. Maybe one day, Lewis. And he's also a racer himself as well. But we won't talk about what you did last week at Knockhill, learning weekend and all that. Crash, basically. We might explore later in the show. But we've got so much to talk about tonight on the programme. Well, we probably won't have time to talk about Lewis's exploits at Knockhill. Because, well, we've got other shenanigans in MotoGP going on, and, well, there's the small matter of the TT happening as well, which is continuing tomorrow as well. One thing that we're not going to do, editorial decision, is mention any non-motorcycle racing results. Just for the small facts of, well, we want to keep this show a positive experience, and for us to not talk about things that directly involved racing, then we basically have nothing good to talk about. As a parent probably told someone somewhere, if you've got nothing good to say about it, then don't say anything at all. So, yeah, we're going to politely sidestep a debate about the obvious big news regarding the TT. So, with that in mind, let's slide into the latest headlines. Luke.
Over in the MotoGP paddock, Fabio Quartararo won the Catalan Grand Prix, making this the third Catalan Grand Prix he's won in his World Championship racing career. Lewis, it's safe to say he won it in a dominant fashion.
Yeah, it certainly is. All race, and, well, most of the weekend he's been looking like he's got the pace. It's one of these performances where as soon as Fabio got let loose, he just went for it and, well, somehow had the tyre for the end.
Keeping with the MotoGP champion, Quartararo signed a 2-year extension with the Monster Energy Yamaha MotoGP team. This will see him stay until the end of the 2024 season. A good decision, do you reckon?
Well, I would say yes and no at the same time. Obviously, right now, the Ducati is looking like the best bike on the grid, I would say. But the Yamaha, he has the whole bike made around him, I would say. I mean, these contract negotiations have been going on for a while. So, yeah, I would certainly say he's been asking for a bit more in his package for the next couple of seasons.
Celestino Vietti extended his championship lead in Moto2 as he won his third race of the season at Catalunya. Aspar Racing Team celebrated their 500th Grand Prix weekend with a race win in Moto3 as Isan Guevara claimed his second win of the season. Marc Marquez has returned to Spain to begin his recovery after undergoing a successful fourth operation on his right humerus in the USA, where they rotated the bone by 30 degrees. Lewis, Marc Marquez, will he come back this season? Will he come back next season? Will he come back at all?
I would say he's certainly going to come back at some point, but when that is, literally no one knows. I don't even think Marc Marquez and the doctors know at this point. It's looking highly unlikely to be back for this season at least, but the future is completely unknown right now.
Tito Rabat will replace the injured Luca Mayas this weekend in World Superbikes for the Kawasaki Pacetti Racing Team. Lewis, how do you reckon Tito is going to get on?
It's tough to say. I mean, Tito has been on the Ducati for a long time now. Even last couple of seasons of World Superbikes, he was on the Ducati, so it's going to be a massive learning curve for him to jump on that new Kawasaki.
Back over on the Isle of Man, Peter Hickman has claimed 3 race wins this week as he was victorious in the RST Superbike TT race, the RL 360 Superstock TT race, and the Bennett Super Twin TT race this afternoon. Lewis, it's safe to say Peter Hickman has been on another level this year at the TT in races he's competed in. You've watched the races. How do you think he got on?
Yeah, even after a 3-year break, he's picked up where he left off. I mean, it's crazy. Peter Hickman has just been dominant in all his races, and he has the opportunity to potentially win 5 in 1 week, which has only ever been done once before.
Michael Dunlop won his 20th race around the Isle of Man as he secured victory in race 1 of the Monster Energy Supersport TT race. Lewis, Michael Dunlop is a well-known name in the Isle of Man. How did he get on for his 20th race win?
Yeah, it was an incredible race. Him and Dean Harrison just battled it out every single lap, every single sector. In fact, it was 1 or 2 tenths separating them, but it just looked like Dunlop had the edge in the last half a lap of the 4-lap race. It was great to see.
And finally, the Birchall brothers bagged their 11th TT win as Ben and Tom won the first race at the freewheeling.media sidecar TT event. Lewis, how was the sidecar race for the Birchall brothers?
Yeah, it was a great race for them, but they were kept on their toes. Everyone thought they were going to run away with this race victory, but Tim Reeves just stayed on it, and yeah, it was a close race for the first half, and then as the race got on and progressed, it just looked like the Birchalls had the upper hand.
Good stuff. I was paying attention, actually. Just checking. Well, I guess that was the news over then, the headlines. But yeah. Okay, so, right, diving back into MotoGP, because a lot to talk about with contracts and, as you say, Marc Marquez and the actual race, particularly the end of, or the end plus a lap, depending on who you are. But yeah, let us know, because we are live tonight on the Superbike show, as we always are here on Motorsport Radio. We welcome your comments, however positive, and I will try and read them out. I'll pay attention and do my best to keep up to date with them. So let us know. It's at Motorsport Radio on the old Facebooks. It's streaming on the BSB Support Fans Facebook page as well. Hello, if you tuned in there. Hello, good evening on this Wednesday night. And yeah, we've got lots more to talk about. Luke, we're going back into MotoGP, and Quartararo destroyed the field, claiming victory.
Yeah, Fabio Quartararo, he came out swinging in Catalonia. He got that new contract in his back pocket with Yamaha, and like Lewis said earlier, there was no stopping him. He hit that first corner in first place from like 3rd on the grid, and that was it. Quartararo was gone. Nobody could touch him. I think he had a lead of 6.4 seconds over the rest of the grid, so he was untouchable in Catalonia.
Good. And Lewis, tell us as well other stuff that happened in the race, other big talking points from your point of view.
Well, I think one of the biggest talking points was actually on the first corner in the first lap with Takaki Nakagami bringing up his rear wheel at the first corner, which then, wherever it landed, it locked up his front tyre and catapulted himself into Pecco Bagnaglia's bike, which then Taka Nakagami's bike then hit Alex Rins and high-sided him, taking all 3 riders out, which really left me wondering what could have happened if Pecco Bagnaia didn't get taken out, as that's a massive blow to his championship hopes.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Lewis there. Pecco's been hard done by in that incident. obviously he didn't see it coming. Taka was directly behind him, hit his rear wheel. There was nothing Bagnaia could have done to avoid it. So it also, I think, opened the race up a lot more for Fabio, because obviously a lot of people had to get through the melee that was in turn one. It reminded me of a crash that happened years ago there with, I think Melandri was involved. I can't really remember everyone else. I think Caparossi may have been involved in it as well. But yeah, it was a shambles of a start really for Rins and Bagnaia, who you could say were Rins definitely top 5 pace, and Bagnaia could have challenged for the win, at least a podium.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And of course, it's left Alex Rins with a broken wrist, which took him out of the Monday test as well, which is crucial for the Suzuki rider. Yeah,
he was out for the test, but I think he should be. He'll give it a go at Sachsenring, definitely. Hopefully, nothing too bad for him, and won't hold him back at the Sachsenring, since it's a very tightened lot of corners at the Sachsenring, which the Suzuki would handle well. So fingers crossed for Rins and Mir, who also had an incredible ride at Catalonia. Johan Mir coming from 17th on the grid. I think I counted it earlier, and he went up 10 places by the entry to turn 2. So it was an incredible ride from Mir.
Yeah, it was. I mean, this weekend, it's been quite a strange weekend. We've seen some great results from riders that you may not expect, like Darren Binder getting a 12th in this race. But it seems just to be, what was the main talking point over the weekend was just the surface of the Catalonia racetrack. It's a lot of people are struggling on it. It's such a low grip racetrack, and it's almost got a greasy feeling to it, the riders are saying. So it's bringing up these results that we wouldn't expect, and it's helping some of the manufacturers and some riders like Fabio Quartararo, which can just stick to his own line and run his own race and get the results that he wants in them conditions.
One rider who was very vocal about his tyre grip, his rear tyre grip, was Jack Miller. Obviously 14th in Catalonia. His teammate was on the deck. Miller started 11th place. Not what he would want when he's really supposed to be going to KTM, so he might already have that done and signed, and it's just not been announced yet. But I'm pretty sure after that result, he can say goodbye to Ducati and the Bologna factory. He's off to what looks to be KTM.
Yeah, it was not a good race for Jack Miller. It was quite sad actually seeing him that low down in the order. But a lot of riders really struggling with grip. I mean, Andrea Dovizioso also retired, and he almost just gave up on the race with his position that he was in, and just how tricky all riders were finding it.
Yeah, Dovi's was a strange one, because Andrea Dovizioso has always seemed to be a bit of a trier throughout his career. He's never been one to give up, but I think another bit of news that will probably come in the next couple of months is I think Dovi's mentally retired already. I don't think we'll see Andrea Dovizioso on the grid next year, which is a shame, because he's been such a big part of recent MotoGP history. 2017 battles with Marquez, 2018 and so on. But ever since he came back to what was the Petronas Yamaha team, he just hasn't looked right on the Yamaha. And, well, I mean, Quartararo is the only one making it work. Binder 12th, Morbidelli 13th, but still Yamaha are in trouble really across the whole field if they didn't have Quartararo.
Yeah, I think that's why they push so hard with these contract negotiations. Practically, I'm guessing, gave him every single thing that he wants. Is there? It's almost like a Marc Marquez and Honda situation that Yamaha have going on right now. Darren Binder, he's starting to produce some very respectable results for his rookie season after coming out of Moto3. Morbidelli's still lacking a bit of pace. There was signs of hope over the course of the weekend that we could see the old Franco, but in the actual race, he still doesn't get the results that he wants. Yeah,
going to Darren Binder, Darren Binder could be hard done by at the end of the year, because obviously the With You RNF team, which was the Petronas Yamaha team, is going to Aprilia. They're going to have 2 satellite Aprilias on the grid next year, and I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that Aprilia are going to decide their 2 riders on their bikes. So it won't be Razlan's choice who rides his bikes, it will be fully Aprilia. So can't help but think that maybe Aprilia won't choose Darren because it's a new bike and he might have to slot back into Moto2.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough time for Darren Binder the next couple of months because contracts are already starting to get signed now. So if he goes down to Moto2, it's going to be even trickier because he's never, ever properly had a go on the Moto2 bike over a course of a race weekend. So it's going to be, once again, another learning curve for the rider, for Darren Binder. But yeah, the RNF team over the course, even last season whenever they were still Patrons, they just seemed to be lacking a little bit over what they were the first couple of years whenever they came into MotoGP in such a fashion that everyone was in shock. They were beating the factory Yamahas, but now it just seems that they're missing something, whether that be internal or whether the bike or just something's missing.
Yeah, because you saying that, you look back to 2020 and even you can think the same for Franco Morbidelli. They were second in the world with Franco Morbidelli at the end of that season, and now Franco's fighting for points. He says he's improving, but we're not really seeing much sign of it in race results. And the with you RNF team is lacking something at the moment. Like you said, I can't decide if, I know Dovi and Rossi have both fallen out with the team boss, so I'm not sure if management might be a problem with what's going on there, but it just seems like, I feel a comment Dovi made was about how he was told he should just ride the bike and not worry about setup as much as he does. But we all know that Dovi's a technical, and Rossi was as well. They're both technical riders, the doctor and the professor. They knew what they wanted and they would tune the bike that they wanted it to be, not listen to the managerial side of how they thought it should be done.
Yeah, Dovi he's such a great rider. He's the only rider that could have ever brought it to Marc Marquez. So it's just so sad to see them this far down the order that it's just something that's missing within the team and the way they're working. Because I have seen quite a lot of comments and jabs made from both sides, from the riders and the team manager, directed at each other. So yeah, I don't think it's a happy camp at the moment.
Yeah, another team that doesn't seem to have a happy camp at the moment is Oliveira with KTM. It seems like they've fallen out big time. It seems like Oliveira was. It looks like he's on his way out of KTM. Basically, it looks like Jack Miller's going to take the seat and replace him and be the teammate to Brad Binder. And Oliveira was offered a tech-free bike, but he practically turned his nose up to that and told KTM, no, pretty much, I'm not. If you think I'm dropping down there, I'm not going to, especially where they are last in the team championships.
Yeah, it's been quite a disappointing year for KTM so far, and I can somewhat understand why he was upset getting offered the tech-free slot. I mean, he's had some great results on that KTM over the years, and I think it is just him and the bike and the tyres just not gelling at the moment. But yeah, I think Grassini wouldn't be a bad move for Oliveira, to be honest. I think it would be on a great bike. It's a great team, actually. They're working well with the Ducati. So I think it's probably a good move for him. But look, I want to ask you, do you think it's a good move of Jack Miller going to KTM?
See, I've been having this debate with some people about whether I think Jack will be good there. But I think Jack and Brad Binder, I feel like they're going to get on well. I feel like there's going to be a good energy in that team. Obviously, Jack knows the Moto2 team boss, Aki Ayo, who's obviously got a strong standpoint in KTM. I'm not sure how much he does with MotoGP, but Jack's personal manager as well. So I feel like relationships will be good in KTM for Jack. So it seems like a good place for Jack to slot into. Whether he'll adapt to the bike, you'd like to hope so. I don't think Jack Miller will ever be MotoGP champion, which is sad to say because I like Jack a lot. I think every MotoGP fan likes Jack, but I think he could win races because Oliveira's won a race this season. Brad Binder's stood on podiums. I don't think he's won a race this season, and It's just something's not clicked with the tech-free team in KTM since they went there, other than Oliveira when he was doing well there. But I feel like give Jack a season or two and he'll be there. I think a 2-year contract will be something that Jack definitely needs because we saw how touch and go it seemed for Jack to remain for a second season with factory Ducati. So it is crucial that he gets that 2-year deal signed.
Yeah, I think it'll give him some extra confidence and just not have to worry about his job at the end of the year and just worry about riding the bike in the present. But another team that's fallen apart, I would personally say, and that is the HRC factory Honda team and the LCR Honda.
Yeah, I was looking at this the other day, and Repsol Honda, the absolutely historic powerhouse of MotoGP in general. They've won championships with so many people, and they're nowhere. It's really weird to see. It's really hard to put what's going on with it. Obviously, they've lost Marc Marquez through injuries. He was the golden boy of Honda. He was the golden boy of MotoGP for a while. He was the man that was taking Honda to all these titles. Pedrosa was struggling in his last year a little bit, but I think he'd mentally retired like Dovi has. Jorge Lorenzo was injured his whole way through his Repsol time. Alex Marquez is another rider who's struggling as well when he was there, and now in LCR as well. Got a couple podiums for Repsol, but Pol Espargaro now as well. He started the season really strong. There was a Honda 1-2 in Qatar, and I think people forget that. And it was a thing of, at that point, Honda have bought a weapon. This is a bike that we need to watch out for. And since then, I can't think of a memorable moment for Pol Espargaro in races. I don't know if you can, Lewis, but I've got nothing in mind that has been a outstanding result that you look at and think, that's a good result for Repsol and Pol.
I can't personally in races since Qatar, but pre-season testing, even at Indonesia, it looked so promising for Pol Espargaro. He was on the pace straight away, and then we turned up at the race weekend, and then they were nowhere once again. Obviously, Marc Marquez had that horrendous high side, but yeah, it's not a good season for them so far. I mean, in Qatar, whenever they got that 1-2, everyone thought that they were going to dominate the season. The fact that this bike was straight out the box, it was newly developed from the ground up, and now it's already winning. And all through pre-season testing, it looked fast. And then now we've got into some sort of drought. Obviously, there's no Marc Marquez, but now Honda do have Stefan Bradl back for the rest of the season. Well, for how long? Potentially the rest of the season to try and develop the bike a bit more.
Yeah, Stefan Bradl, got to talk about his... I think you could easily put awful performance in Catalonia. Survived 10 corners before he crashed out, and really, I think Neil Hodgson touched on it in commentary. Not what you want from your test rider. Obviously, Pirro was there with the Aruba Ducati, very good looking bike. But Pirro survived the whole race, 16th, no points, but Pirro's there to test new things. I think he had a different front aero package on, looking at pictures. So he was there testing things, but Stefan Bradl, 10 corners and then crashing out. It's not what HRC, who are last in the constructors' standings, would want.
No, it's certainly not. It's been a pretty dreadful weekend for Honda. I mean, Alex Marquez was the top result, I think, with 10th place, which is shocking to say for such a big company and such a team that had so much pride behind them. But it's not what you want with your test rider crashing out, because the thing is, in testing, you can do as much laps as you can, testing new parts, but you don't know how good they are until you bring them to a race weekend in a race with like 20 other bikes with you. So it's really crucial that he stays in these races and just gets the points and learns.
Yeah. That's what the test rider should be doing. He should be staying in, should be battling with other people. I think he was around the same position that Pirro was in some of the Tech 3s. So, he could have bowed out with Pirro and had a test rider competition towards the back end of the points and learn some things about the bike, not throw it down the road at turn 10.
It's not been a good weekend for Honda, but another team which their race kind of fell apart in the space of 30 seconds, I think, and that is Gresini Ducati.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Bastianini, he's come into MotoGP last season with Avintia Ducati. That's what they called it at the time, yeah. But it just seems the last two races, obviously, he's crashed out. Everyone was putting him in that factory Ducati seat. Is he starting to show a little bit of what Jorge Martin was doing and what people were starting to doubt him about? Will he crash out in Germany again? It's things that I think Ducati have done well with their decisions so far from what we know, because normally Ducati's announced something at Mugello. Petrucci replaced Lorenzo at Mugello that year that Lorenzo won. Normally, Ducati are really quick to the mark, which has let them down in years gone by. So if they're just going to sign them onto Ducati, not put them in a team yet, and then decide, because there's also the thing of Johann Zarco is sat in fourth, looking consistent this season. He's had 3 podiums now, 3rd place in Catalunya for the Pramac team. Could he be with a shout for the factory Ducati seat alongside Bagnaia? Because 9 times out of 10, he will bring home the points. He's not really a big crasher, Zarco.
Yeah, he's not. I can only think of a couple of occasions where Zarco has threw it away. And he's such a consistent rider, and he's a mature rider who's going to be able to help Ducati develop the bike a bit more. He has so much experience behind him.
Exactly.
But it just seems like Bastianini is just starting to fall apart a little bit. But we're also at the point of the season where they are obviously on the older GP21 Ducati. So it's starting to become that crossover where they've got the 22s dialed in, and now the 21s are starting to get pushed back in times and, well, starting to get outperformed like they should, really.
Other than his 3 race wins this season, Bastianini's best result is an 8th place, which I didn't realise. I thought he would have had closer in the top 5 at some races, but obviously you can't take away his race wins. They were all incredible race wins, obviously at the season opener as well. And his teammate Digi is one who's a rookie, just come in this season. He's starting to prove himself, and it looks like seats in MotoGP. It's a musical chairs at the moment, really, and someone is going to be left unhappy, and hopefully it won't be Digi, because he's starting to show some real good potential. Pole position at Mugello, 5th place on the grid at Catalunya. He did crash out, but he was in 10th place, I believe, and rookie errors creep in for people like Digi, so hopefully he doesn't lose his seat next season.
Yeah, Digi's impressed me this season, especially that pole position in Mugello. He's starting to show his true form. Personally, for me, I thought Digi was going to be scrapping for 1 or 2 points all season, to be honest. I mean, I wasn't really expecting too much from him, but he's outperformed my expectations highly. And yeah, hopefully he keeps his seat and just has a bit more time to develop for the MotoGP bike, because he really does deserve it. I mean, all the Ducati riders deserve it. That's the thing. Ducati has, although they have 8 bikes on the grid, which is a crazy amount of bikes, every single rider deserves to be there. And they have so much riders coming up now, such as Chavestino Vietti, that it's going to be so hard to get all these riders into one grid next year.
It's like you look over to another Ducati team, the VR46 team. Luca Marini, last year and a bit at the start of this year as well, very underwhelming to say he was on the factory bike this year. And obviously I don't think it helped last year that he was on the Sky VR46 bike. It's such a, a lot of people looked at that bike. His half brother is Valentino Rossi. There's no hiding that. But this year and the last 3 races, he's been in the top 10 comfortably, 9th, 6th and 6th. He's really, starting to come on form. And if he can carry this throughout the rest of the season, he's going somewhere with this VR46 team.
Yeah, he certainly is. And Marco Bezzecchi as well, starting to show his true form as well. I mean, it's become this point in the season where all these Moto2 riders that have came up for this season are just starting to learn their trade and they're outstanding and showing everyone up, really, that's been in this class for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I'll tell you, someone who desperately needed a point, and they got it this weekend, was Raul Fernandez in Tech 3. He'd missed out 2 races, obviously, this season through injury or concussion. I can't remember which one of the 2 it was, but 15th place in Catalunya. It's for 2nd place in the Moto2 Championship, and Romy Gardner, his teammate, also only 2 points in positions this year. Tech 3 just seemed to be a little bit behind, especially when you compare with the factory boys being 6th and 11th, and Remy and Raul at 23rd and 24th.
Yeah, obviously they are new riders to this championship, but it's such a big gap. I mean, KTM at the start of the season basically told us that they have almost identical bikes between the Tech 3 and the factory team, but it just doesn't look to be that way, to be honest. There looks to be something slightly missing. Maybe it's just the way the Tech 3 team's working with the bike this year, but yes, it's starting to look up for the Tech 3 team, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, we mentioned riders who could be out of a seat next year, Raul Fernandez seems like he's fallen out with KTM since he, well, even last year, didn't really want to move up to MotoGP yet. He wanted to hold out on a satellite Yamaha. Obviously, that wouldn't have worked out for him anyway if he'd have done that. But I think it was announced in the middle of a session last year, weren't it, in Austria, that Raul Fernandez would be stepping up and Lecuona would be obviously let go by KTM. But he's just maybe burning bridges that he shouldn't be at the moment, where there's going to be 2 less bikes on the grid as it stands at the moment. Things could change, and doesn't look like KTM will keep him. Remy Gardner's on thin ice, I think, from his manager's comments recently, but they're burning bridges potentially, and 2 less bikes, no Suzuki. It's the thing of, we said, there's Vietti, there's Canet, there's Agura, who are all in Moto2 and impressing, and they could be just losing themselves a MotoGP seat and could be going over to World Superbikes potentially, or back to Moto2 for some of them who are like Remy and Raul.
Yeah, I think everyone right now is questioning whether it would have been better for Raul to stay in Moto2 for them this season, but KTM really pushed them to get into MotoGP, even though he publicly stated that he didn't want to go into the championship for this season. He wanted another year to develop and wait on that Yamaha seat, as you mentioned. But it's such a tricky thing that Raul Fernandez has got himself into, because obviously his brother also rides for KTM. He pushed for his brother to get a KTM seat himself. So he could be potentially just, making huge implications for not only his career, but his brother's career.
Yeah, it's in a troubled situation at the moment. And speaking of brothers, and we've talked about Paul, we've avoided it a little bit, I think, and should probably talk about Aleix Espargaro and what happened on the weekend. And honestly, I think we can both agree with this. I feel awful for Aleix after what happened. It looked like he was going to get a dream home Grand Prix podium. And he was pole, which was, amazing start on the Saturday. We were having a chat before this, and I was telling you how I was confident. Double points to him on MotoGP Fantasy. He was in for a podium at least. And last lap, he came round down the final straight in, what he thought was the last lap, down the final straight in second place, and just sat it up and ran it on in turn 1. Everyone, including myself, thought engineering problem, something had gone wrong. The engine obviously wasn't smoking or something, but it cut out. Had it just turned off on him, had an electrical fault happened. But no, Aleix Espargaro thought the race was over a lap early and was waving to the crowd and seemed disappointed with second, and in the end he was very disappointed with 5th.
Yeah, we see this as soon as he went into that pit box, how distraught he was. He was in tears in the corner of his pit box. It's so upsetting to see, but it was his own mistake. And the thing about Aleix is he'll hold that to himself and make sure he'll never, ever make that mistake again. I can almost put my money on it that Aleix Espargaro will never do anything like that ever again. But whenever the cameras cut to him, coming across the line and slowing down, it was the second he turned round and seen, I think it was it Bezzecchi or Marini? It was Marini. The second he seen him coming towards him at full race pace, he then clicked that, oh wait, this is still a race, and you just seen the instant change of body language and the aggression, and luckily he managed to overtake Marini and did lose more valuable championship points, because that was another 9 points missed from making that silly mistake.
Yeah, I was watching that and watching him coming back on track when he was still slow, and I was thinking he's going to pull out in front of Marini here and cause something nasty, or Marini to lose out on the good point scoring position he was in. But luckily that didn't happen, and Aleix still managed to get around, finished 5th. Lucas still finished 6th, but I was watching him in Sachsenring do an extra lap. He'll go race pace on the cool down lap just so he doesn't make that mistake again. But it was devastating. Honestly, he was bawling his eyes out. You could hear it over the TV stream, and it's an emotional rider as well. Him and his brother both are. You can see it in practice when they get wound up by people, and especially when a weekend he was dedicating his ride to his daughter Mia, and the foundation that had helped her with her heart operation when she was born, and he looked absolutely gutted, and you feel for him, especially when that could have been another podium added to his list. It would have been damage limitation on Fabio. He's lost could be crucial championship points to Fabio. If it ends the season of that margin that he would have lost, he will be absolutely kicking himself.
Yeah, I think everyone is everyone's kicking themselves over his mistake. No one, I don't think, could believe in what he did. Even his team, they were in absolute disbelief. But I was watching an interview, and I think he said it was because his pit board was that close to the last corner that whenever he came around the corner, he only really glanced at it and looked at the gap behind him. So then he carried on and then realised that he doesn't know how much laps to go, basically. So he looked at the top of the timing board that's at Catalonia, and I believe on the last lap it does say 0 laps left. That's just the way they've always done it. So he said he's read 0 laps left and just thought, well, the race is over now. So looking at it like that, you can understand how that mistake's made, but it's still not one you can make at the top form of motorcycle racing. Especially
when I think it's the same at every track. There are normally 2 checkered flags on the pit wall as well. If you wouldn't see the first one, maybe he's come across the line, still feels speed, potentially doesn't know if Martin's right behind him, but surely you'd notice that there wasn't a second one as well. And it's like you're at the top of your game in MotoGP. Obviously, full respect to Aleix. I'm not disrespecting him at all here. These mistakes can happen. Everyone's human. It's just a way of life, sadly. And surely you'd think you're fighting for a MotoGP championship. You'd notice that Fabio wasn't there. You'd think you'd see Fabio at turn 1 celebrating, especially with the way he dominated that. And to see Martin and Zarco both go past you at full speed as well. Would you not have thought by that point, Lewis, that maybe I've read this wrong?
Yeah, I think I would have by then. I mean, it's a mistake you would expect to see in club level championships, maybe. I mean, we do have last lap flags, which I know they don't use in MotoGP, but I also do believe that on the MotoGP bikes, they are able to have flags on their dashboards to signify yellow flags in the end of the race, checkered flags. So it's not a great weekend for Aleix. He'll be kicking himself until Sachsenring, where he'll hopefully try and make it better, which I do think the Aprilia will perform well at. Yeah,
I agreed. I thought they had the lap counter on our dash as well, but maybe Aleix doesn't. Maybe he sets that differently. But his teammate, Maverick Vinales, a solid 7th place for him this weekend. It's a very good ride from Maverick, and it looks like he's starting to find form on the Aprilia. That's his 7th place this season. That's his best result of the season. So could we see more in Germany, Netherlands, a track we know he likes, over in Assen? He's won there multiple times on the Yamaha, I believe. But could we finally start seeing a return to old Maverick Vinales?
Well, I hope so. I really do hope so. He's such a good rider whenever he's at the front battling for race wins. He's so determined, and his riding style is amazing. He's such a calculated rider as well. But yeah, I think it's starting to come for Maverick Vinales. It's not just the race as well. All weekend, he's shown you the pace. He was on it in all 3 practice sessions at the top with his teammate. And even in qualifying, it probably wasn't the qualifying he necessarily wanted. But one thing we've been seeing quite a lot, even whenever he's riding for Yamaha, is that Maverick Vinales drops back at the start of the race. And he seems to be slightly overcoming that now, which is great to see.
Yeah, I was about to mention that as well. The one thing is that happened, he made the start. He didn't drop back like a stone. He wasn't down in, 15th, 14th place by the first corner, because he just seemed a little bit, on the Yamaha especially towards the latter years, he just seemed a bit wary going into turn 1, which, fair enough, you would be with some of the riders on that grid who, showed this weekend with Taka Nakagami sadly taking out 2 top-level riders who would have been up there in the fight. But it just seems like Maverick needed that inner confidence, and there were points where I doubted Maverick would come back to where he is on his way to, it looks like now. And I hope we do see him, because he's talented. We all can see he is majorly talented, and he has the amount of talent to be a MotoGP champion. Whether he'll find that on an Aprilia is another story. But I don't know, is his teammates doing it? He's signed on for another 2 years. Could it be Maverick Vinales' time with Aprilia?
I hope so. I mean, the Aprilia is starting to come on now, and they're trying new things. I think it was Mugello when we first seen actually the Aprilia rear wing. If you cast your mind back to Mugello, it was something that we've never seen on a motorcycle before. But yeah, it's great to see that they're finally coming on and developing things.
Yeah, they brought in a new rear floor as well at the Catalan. Not rear floor, sorry. It looked like a floor. Their new rear wing that they brought in, which seemed like a very extreme version of what Ducati are trying with their bike, and it might work, but it would be a thing of it's the best time to bring it in one of those tests, or when Savadori's there. But I don't know, they're looking confident. They've got the back in, and maybe, Aprilia are a championship contender finally.
Yeah, well, I hope so. It would mean so much to them after every single thing that they've went through. And just one quick note actually on the Aprilia testing new things is that at the Catalan test on the Monday, they rocked up with a new side fairing. I don't know if you've seen a picture of it, Luke, but it's something that I've never seen on a motorcycle before. There's no way to actually describe it. It almost jerks out of the normal fairing. So, if this is like a normal fairing here, it then goes like this and then squares off. It's and adds almost like another layer to it. I believe it's to try and get a bit more downforce whenever they're leaning over the bike, but I'm not certain on it because no one is actually really that sure. It's never really been seen before.
Yeah, so normally that's a Ducati thing to bring. You'd expect Gigi Dall'Igna to use that amazing imagination he seems to have with just upgrading bikes, and Aprilia have gone to it first. Whether Ducati just haven't thought of it and didn't try it, but they've got extreme, it's safe to say. They went extreme with those massive wings, which were in last year, I believe. They had absolutely just, I don't know what competition they were trying to win there, but they were going for something. And this year, it just seems like they've calmed that down a bit, but now they're bringing in this. It looked like something to keep the bike up. It looked like some sort of stabilizer, really, that they'd have going along the floor so they didn't crash it, but it was weird. I have no clue what that would bring for them, but hopefully something for Espargaro's case to try and win this championship.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Espargaro and Aprilia, I don't think anyone had it on the start of the season that they would be, fighting for the championship against Quartararo. They are the closest, Alicia Espargaro is the closest rider to Fabio, and it looks like it's the only person that's going to have a hope to try and challenge him, because Pecco Bagnaia, as we said earlier, I just don't see him coming back. Although we're about halfway in the season now, there's still races left, but it's going to be so tricky for any other rider to really start and compete against Quartararo and the dominance performance that he's shown this weekend.
Obviously, we've talked a lot about MotoGP, Moto2 as well. We've spoke briefly about a couple of the riders there who could be moving up to MotoGP. Celestino Vietti, like I said earlier, he looked on form once again. He looked, obviously, had a problem in Mugello. They didn't really say what it was. I imagine it was the chain, something to do with that, because the bike just seemed to lose drive. France and Spain, again, he looked a little bit iffy from how he had been at the start of the season, and I think it's safe to say Vietti's refound his form.
Yeah, he certainly has, and what a race it was in Moto2. It's probably the best race of the season that we've seen. 4 or 5 riders scrapping it out all the way to the end, and there was nothing in between them really, which is something that we don't always say for Moto2, so it's great to say.
Yeah, started from pole as well. He reminded me a little bit of Valentino in a way, the way he went about his weekend, sort of built in slowly. Valentino in his prime to ending his prime as well, especially of Fridays was more sent to set up the bike, spent a lot of time on that, and then I think he went through Q1 as well, topped that and then put it on pole, which a lot of people saw him in Q1 and would have been thinking, Vietti's off it here. This is like Ayagura's championship to sort of reclaim here. And Canet, who was looking strong as well, but put it on pole, won the race, went about it very maturely, and it was a champion's ride, really.
Yeah, it certainly was. But Aaron Canet actually impressed me massively, just to be able to be with Chavestino Vietti and gave it like to the last corner. He was just on his back wheel trying to find a way past. He was trying new lines through that last corner because Vietti played it absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, speaking of last corners as well, did you see Jake Dixon's exit out of that last corner? He was in 4th place, was desperate to take that podium off Augusto Fernandez.
Yep.
And he just came out of there with such drive, and I was thinking, he's going to do this on the straight, and then I realised that the line is too close for that to happen.
Yeah.
If it had been further down where the second checkered flag is, Jake could have done it on drive potentially, but he had a very, very mature ride, very strong rider, a race where he was leading at one point, and Jake, it happened in Indonesia, I think, and in Portimao as well, just threw it away in good positions. But this week he looked very strong, very mature, and hopefully it's a sign of things to come, since Jake, had a podium this season, a 6th and a 4th now. He had 3 bad results on the bounce. Hopefully this is the start of a good set of form for Jake.
Yeah, I was disappointed not to see Jake Dixon get the podium at the weekend, obviously being a Brit, but I was so pleased to see that he's just stayed on it in the end, and I was with the leading group. There was not too much off him off the race win, in fact. So he can be there, and he doesn't have to throw it down the road. So hopefully this is signs of things to come. As you said, just try to get the right mentality now. But one rider who looks like he did throw it away is Joe Roberts, and it was so sad to see him crash at turn 5. He was on for a great result.
Yeah, Joe Roberts, obviously a race winner this season. I think it was his first Moto2 race win as well at Portimao, the race that Jake threw down the road in. But he was clear. He was gone. And maybe he just pushed that little bit too hard. Like we said earlier, there's a lack of grip at Catalunya. They've been complaining about that for the last couple of years going there. We saw that, for the last couple of years, it's only been about 15 riders finishing races in MotoGP. So Joe Roberts knew the risk. He went for it and paid the price, really. He crashed out, and just no points from Catalunya, which is a shame since he was looking strong. I think that would have put him 4th at least in the championship, I think, at the time, and now he's still sat in 6th.
Yeah, he is, and it's such a shame, as I said. I mean, his win in Portimao was a great performance once again, but there was a lot of people saying on social media, I think you've probably seen some of the comments, basically, that only half the riders were in the race and it was mixed conditions. So it would have been so nice for him to win a race in normal, dry conditions with no variables, and it looked like he was on to do it. But talking about mature rides, actually, just going back to that point, was a mature rider, in fact, with Marcel Strotter, and it's great to see him in the top 5 once again.
Yeah, he went for a different tyre choice as well. On I think it was his rear tyre was different to the rest of the field. And I was thinking about it before, and I was looking at it, and it was a thing of Marcel Strotter. He's been around for some time. Why would he do this? And I looked at the championship, and you see he sat in 7th, and he's still not got that race win in Moto2. Been around for a while now in the Liqui Moly Intact GP team as well, which Tom Luthi's been very successful in the past. But I think it was a thing of Marcel probably knew that he could at least finish the Grand Prix in a good position with the tyre. And it was a thing of, I've got to try something different and maybe get that win, which it was a strong weekend, and another rider had a strong weekend and potentially didn't look like they may have had one at the start was Pedro Acosta. Made his way through nicely up to 6th place after his win in Mugello. Not what a lot of people thought, which would have been Mugello win Catalunya, at least on the podium, but he's still a rookie. There's a lot of pressure that's been put on Pedro this season, and this is why I said from the moment he stepped up to Moto2, and pretty sure the moment I started coming on the show as well, Pedro Acosta shouldn't be in MotoGP next year. Not because he's not talented enough, but because he needs the time to adapt to a bigger bike.
Yeah, he does. Everyone's been saying he was the next Marc Marquez, which I highly agree with, to be honest. But even Marc Marquez, he had 2 years in Moto2, so what's the rush? He's still young. And he's already got that race win under his belt, which I do think has put quite a lot of pressure off. Especially whenever he's leading the race or going to lead the race in Le Mans and he threw it away. The pressure was just starting to build up. The media, even from the start of the season, has been piling on so much pressure. Some people even double him to win the championship in his rookie year like he did in Moto3, which I think is highly unfair, and I think we've all came to see that it takes time to develop these bikes. But it's great to see that Pedro Costa's back where he should be, and that's the front of the grid.
Yeah, as someone who is under a lot of pressure, but for the wrong reasons at the moment, another Brit, Sam Lowes. That is his 5th DNF in a row. I will add some of those aren't his fault. He was taken out in America, was taken out by Chantra, Portimao to tricky conditions, Mugello with his teammate. That was that looked like it was going to get feisty in the box between those two. But this weekend, it definitely looked like it was all on his own. And there was confusion at first. Maybe a Renas had took him out, but it looked like a Renas had a technical fault, had to retire, and Sam just went down at the next corner, which Sam doesn't need at this stage of his career.
No, he certainly doesn't. It's not nice to see at all. It's starting maybe to get inside his head that it's almost going to have to get to that point where he's got to force himself to stay on the bike and just forget about the result that comes out of it, just to try to break past his barrier of crashing every single time that he gets near a pretty respectable result for him. But yeah, a lot of people now from in the paddock and the media are speculating and wondering where he's going to be in 2024 and for the future of his career, because Moto2 and Moto3 has so much talent in it, and that Mark VDS team is a top bike and a top team to be in, so there's a lot of riders chasing for his seat.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the start of his season here. 3rd and 4th in the opening 2 races. Good start for Sam this season. And then a 10th in Argentina. I don't think Sam historically has been too good around Argentina. Yeah. He's been a crasher in his career, and I think he's crashed a few times there especially. But then to have a run of 5 DNFs in a row, and it did not start in Le Mans, which was his fault for the high side he had in qualifying, I think, affected himself somehow. He'd damaged himself, and he's just not looked right since America, since he got taken out. And it's the thing of, you sit there and you think, or even Portimao, when the rain hit, where he was on for a solid top 5 again. And it's the thing of, Sam, the way he was looking, could have been up towards the front end of the championship. He's 14th in the championship. He's only 2 positions above Jeremy Alcoba, who is a rookie. And it's like, you look at that and you think, he's behind Cameron Beaubier, he's behind Bo Benschneider, who, don't get me wrong, both very talented riders in their own right, but in what would be seen as the lesser teams in Moto2.
Yeah. The Mark VDS team, they're a top team. They really expect to be getting these race wins or podiums or even top 5 week in, week out, but it's been a very disappointing season for him. I mean, he was a rider that finished 2nd in the championship in 2020, so it's really, really sad to see, to be honest, the way his season's going and the way his career is going, to be honest. But yeah, hopefully he can improve in results. And another rider that seems quite disappointed over his results this weekend actually was Ayogura, who of course is battling for the championship right now.
Yeah, I've made it clear before in the past, I'm pretty sure that I'm a fan of Ayogura. I like the way he goes about his business. I do believe he will, or should, replace Taka in the LCR Idemitsu side of the garage next season. But 7th place, really, for Taka, it seems almost like a bad result. And he was battling with Celestino at one point. I think he got messed up by some riders behind him at some point, put wide in a couple corners, got involved in some battles that Celestino managed to avoid and get out towards the front, which we saw. But he seems like one of those traditional, we've said it before, mature, like Japanese riders, like doesn't seem to get flustered. You see it in his interviews. He's very calm. There doesn't seem to be much emotion to Ayogura at all. I can't even remember if he seemed happy when he won in Spain, because he reminds me a lot of his team manager, which is Aoyama, who as well didn't ever really seem to be happy. And I think Iger even said in Moto3 that they'd almost had it drilled into them that a good result is a race win. And then anything else other than a race win is like, it's okay, but it's not, you can do better sort of thing.
Yeah, it's not what Iger is wanting, of course. I mean, now he's 16 points down in the championship, which is pretty disappointing for him as well. But this is actually his worst result of the season as well, apart from the DNF in Portimao, but that was the changeable conditions. So I can somewhat understand on why he would be so disappointed, but it's still a respectful result, but it's not what you need when Chavestino Vietti is at such good form right now.
Yeah, but I still think there's time. There's still plenty of rounds to go. Obviously, we don't have the Finnish Grand Prix anymore, which is a round off. But I'm fairly confident of Ayaguro when we get to Motegi later on in the season. On that Asian stretch towards the end with the Japanese, Thai and the Malaysian Grand Prix, especially in Malaysia where it is like, you see him on the grid, it is hot there. It is a hot, humid race. And even it could throw in the mixed conditions, which you see a lot in Malaysia and Japan and Thailand, things like that, of massive downpours. And Ayagura, I feel like if anything of that happens, it's really hot, massive downpours, should be one to watch later on in the season especially. So if he can just stick close to Celestino in the rest of this European stretch, then he could pull it back towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. There's nothing I can really add on that. I mean, Ayagura, I do somewhat hope and do believe that he will replace Takaki Nakagami at the end of the year, especially after, as we talked about, what we've seen this weekend. Not a lot of people are happy with the way he performed, including his team boss. And Ayagura is kind of Honda's golden child at the moment, it seems, the Japanese golden child. So it's looking good for him at the moment for the future of his career, and it looks like he's not going to have to worry too much about the future.
Yeah, Honda have fully backed him. He's in the Honda Team Asia squad. There had been talks that his teammate Chantra would go on to potentially as well be in his name be in the hat, but it seems like he was a podium or Bennett man until this weekend. He'd had a race win, a second place, a third, and 4 DNFs. And then this weekend a 12th place, which really, I can't understand Chantra, really. And it's just a thing of, he's talented. We can see that. He's proven that at some tracks this season, but I don't know, just some things when he's not on the podium, maybe he gets flustered. I can't tell with Chantra what goes on.
Yeah, I can't either. It has to be somewhat like psychology with him. It has to be. I mean, Indonesia, we've seen a superb performance from Chantra, and everyone was thinking that this could be his year. He's found out how the team works, how the bike works, and how to go about things, because obviously Indonesia, it's the first time everyone's been to that track, so it's not like he had a home upper hand that someone could say that, maybe that's why he got a good result. It was just pure pace, so everyone thought that this could be it, this could be the start of his season, it's just going to roll on. But since then, it's been highly up and down, as you said.
2 riders as well who have started to, especially this one, Lorenzo Dalla Porta's started to finally score points. He's yet to get the top 10 this season, but he's getting there on points. He's been shaky in his first couple of seasons in Moto2 after winning that Moto3 title, as well as Manuel Gonzalez for the Yamaha VR46 Master Camp team. He's been impressive this season, coming over from World Supersport. Youngest ever world champion in the World Supersport 300, I think. He was... Yes. I don't know if he's youngest ever in terms of like younger than Caparossi and Acosta, but I think he might have been. But he's picked up top 5 this season, 9th in Catalonia. He's someone to watch in Moto2 in the future.
Yeah, he is. And he's another name that you can throw into the hat with just the amount of talent that now we have in Moto2. That there's about 15 riders that you can make a case up for going into the MotoGP paddock at some point in the future, the next 1 or 2 years. And yeah, it gives people like Ayagura and Chantra, who have Honda's backing, that slight upper hand, and is really starting to look not so great for the older riders on the grid, such as Sam Lowes and your Bo Ben Snyder and your Marcel Schrotters. It's starting just to look a bit, question their future, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent in Moto2. You look down the grid, and even when you get down to Sean Dillon Kelly, okay, he's not had a great season, but we all know he's talented. Kenneth Kubo as well, very talented young rider in the Master Camp team. Sadly, wasn't in Catalonia for personal reasons to do with his family. Looking through just the whole championship, there's only a handful of riders that I don't think a MotoGP talent level, and it's just incredible to look through what's in there. And Moto3 as well, going over to them and from Catalonia as well. There's a star was definitely born in Catalonia with David Munoz. I said at the start of the season, obviously he wasn't going to be there. Looking at testing results, I was saying, I think it's probably in the first ever one of these I did, that he's gonna be something special when he arrives in Mugello and onwards. So keep an eye on him. And second place in Catalonia, Lewis.
Yeah, David Munoz. It was something special. It's such a unique riding style he has. It's almost do or die, to be honest. His moves are absolutely ruthless, which goes perfectly in for Moto3. But his second ever Grand Prix race, and you're already at the front. He was leading the race for multiple laps. And one thing that did stand out, not just David Munoz at the Catalan Grand Prix, was how fast the Leopard Hondas were in a straight line.
Going back over to MotoGP, we've had some comments about, I'm assuming Stefan Bradl with King of the Testing means now you have to go around with a pack chasing you or you chasing them, then you see the real data. That's from Chris Howells, and I think from what we were saying at the time, completely agree with you there, Chris, that they're just Stefan Bradl almost doesn't seem like test rider material in a race. Don't know what he does behind closed doors. Could do something amazing, but I'm not sure. Chris also said, to top it off with Espargaro's early celebrations, no rear tyre choice in the world will solve that. Just maybe looking at the laps remaining. Poor chap. Yeah, have to agree with Chris again there. Just absolute agony. I think we all felt for Espargaro. It was a bad call from him, and got unlucky with where his garage was and where his pit box was. And another person who would definitely be heartbroken after the Moto3 race was Foggia on the Leopard bike, like you were saying. DNF 2 in a row. They were very fast, but it didn't go well. Same with another experienced Italian, Andrea Migno. DNF for him as well.
Yeah, it was such a mixed race with so many emotions, really. I mean, Dennis Foggia's retirement, I couldn't believe it personally. The Leopard team is always a team that is known for being tip-top. Their bikes are absolutely perfect. Every single race, they're usually a step above all the other Hondas. But I believe it was his chain coming off that caused him to retire, which is something that, yet again, is quite unusual to see, to be honest. And it's a massive blow to his championship. And it's really questioned, can he make this back? And, well, first we have to wait and see. I think it's the best answer to that.
Going over to the British boys, and John McPhee, he's made it back into the top 10, a 7th place in Catalonia. Good strong ride from John. Thought he had a chance at the podium at one point. He was making his way up towards, and just seemed like in one corner, potentially ran it wide, potentially got nerfed out wide with how Moto3 is, but there was a big crash in front of him. I can't really remember who was involved in it at one point. 3 riders.
Yamanaka was one.
Yeah, Yamanaka took a couple riders. I can't remember, was Mino involved in that? Holgado was involved in it. Yeah, that was another one that was in there. But John benefited from that.
Mario Adje as well, I believe.
I think it was, but John benefited from that, made up a few positions. Everyone else sort of went on a wider line to avoid it, and John just stuck to the racing line and just stayed committed. And it was just seeing that, I was like, okay, yeah, John McPhee's back.
Yeah, it's great to see John back. I thought he was also on for at least a podium. It was just like, he was just sitting there biding his time. He's quite a mature rider. He's been in Moto3 for a while, so he knows that he doesn't need to be doing what Davide Munoz was, and that was making moves and kind of breaking up the pack towards the end of the race from Guevara. And yeah, he was just sitting there buying his time, and I thought eventually he was going to start making his way up as the laps went on, but it just wasn't his to be. And it's still some confidence that he could bring into the next couple of rounds. Just a 7th place, he's back. He's had such a big injury. He's on a new bike this year with a new team, so he still has quite a lot to learn, and he did beat his teammate. So, yeah, he smiles all around, I'm sure. There's nothing you can complain about too much because, as you know, Moto3, nothing's separating 1st to 12th. So, it's a great result for him.
Going over to other Brits, obviously, Scott Ogden, more points this weekend. 14th place. I thought at one point he was definitely battling for 13th with Bertelle. Looked like could have been on for 13th place, but again, points in his rookie season, you can't complain really.
No, I mean, you can't complain. Every single round that Scott can get points in, he's happy with. I mean, he won last year in the junior GP at Catalonia, actually. He won. So he's got some great results around that track. So hopefully he can just try and get a bit more confidence from that result. I mean, it's not his first points finish of the season, and he's beaten his teammate, and I believe the Vision track also the 3rd bike out this weekend. So he beat both his teammates, as a matter of fact. So he's happy with his result. And yeah, it's a good result for the Brits once again.
Josh Watley, retired. Was that a mechanical or did Josh Watley crash, Lewis? Can you remember?
I can't actually remember what happened to Josh. Neither can.
It's just seeing that. I don't remember seeing much about Josh. Obviously made a mistake in qualifying, and that sort of ruined his chances of the race, really, there and then almost.
Yeah, it certainly did. And I was just looking at the... I can't see anything on Josh Watley, so I'm going to... I'll try to find some. Oh, yeah, he's retired, so he did crash. So it must have been some sort of bike issue, or maybe he just didn't feel comfortable in the strange conditions. So, yeah, I mean, Josh has had quite a learning curve this season. Obviously, he does have a lot less experience than Scott, but this new change in age rules has forced him to make this jump prematurely. But I'm sure Josh will get there eventually.
Yeah, obviously, the change of age rule you're going to, obviously, the 18-year-olds can join Moto3 now unless, I think, special allowance for the junior GP and Red Bull rookies champions if they're of certain age. Not sure, might have been 16. I haven't, I'm not too sure on that, 16 or 17 probably. But Josh has got the opportunity with Vision Track Racing Team at a good time. He's still very young. I look at his results sometimes and compare him to Scott, and then I remember Scott is that little bit older, and Josh, 16, I think, only still. Yeah. And you see that, and it gets depressing because you're 19 and talking about him. But Josh has got a lot to learn. We talk about it a lot. It's a learning year for Josh, really, for this season. It's his first year in Moto3, and we all hope to see Josh start scoring points potentially at the latter end of the season and at the start of next season.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to want some points. I mean, he's quite hard on himself. So is Scott, actually, whenever they don't get the results they want, which is, looking at it from the outside, it seems like they're being too hard on themselves, but in their mind, it's the only way to really find more speed in themselves, find every single tenth of a second, which really matters in Moto3. But one thing that I've actually forgot to mention with Scott was his qualifying as well, which is quite hectic qualifying. And he had quite a good qualifying result, considering he only got one lap in, I believe, from making a silly mistakes, really, and tucking the front and crashing, forcing them to run it back to the pits.
Yeah, that's happened earlier on in the season at Indonesia as well, I think, and Taylor Mackenzie referred to that on BT Sport, where he said that the whole team are now prepared to turn the bike around in like a matter of minutes to get Scott back out there, but he did a good job. You can't complain with how the British boys are doing at the moment. John McPhee's back and looks like he could challenge for podiums. Scott Ogden's scoring points, and Josh Watley is obviously still getting his feet in the championship, but showing some promise with results of 20th place in Indonesia, things like that. So Silverstone, I think could be a decent round for Brits. Jake Dixon, Moto2, John McPhee could be up there in Moto3, and you know that Scott Ogden and Josh Watley, with how hard they are on themselves, will be gunning for a result at their home race.
Yeah, they will be. And actually, with Jake Dixon, he's never had a proper good crack at the British Grand Prix on a great Moto2 bike that he's got. Obviously, last year was in MotoGP, and then the year before that, he was on a slightly lesser bike. So this season, we're probably going to get to see what he can do at his home race and what all the Brits can do at their home race, because they're all going to want great results against all these Spaniards and Italians.
Unless Dovey retires early and Jake Dixon gets called in again, which I doubt will happen because of comments from them. But anyway, that's the British Grand Prix, 3 rounds time.
Yep. Saxon
Ring next, then Assen as well. I think everyone loves Assen Grand Prix, especially when they're competitive towards the front. But I think it's time we move over to the Isle of Man, which we haven't we talked about earlier. But Peter Hickman, we said it earlier. I've not watched the racing. I don't have the pass. Lewis has been, but from what I've seen on the live time, and Hickman's just gone back there, like you said earlier, and he's just taken it to him like you'd expect a rider of Peter Hickman's caliber too.
Yeah, Peter Hickman, as I mentioned at the start of the show, he's picked up from where he left off. Absolute dominant performance, really. There's no other way I can put it in both races, both the Superbike and the Superstock. Connor Cummins was coming on in the Superstock race towards the lateral half of the race. So it looks like potentially for the senior, we might see something special for Connor, which I think everyone would love to see, with it being a Manx rider. Everyone would love to see him win the Manx at a Manx racetrack, really. But it was a great race. And from Davy Todd, actually, had some tyre issues once again, which was quite unusual and slightly shocking to see. A second lap then Sylvie Straight, I believe, the tyre issues came in and forced him to retire. And the Pageants team and Davy Todd have had awful luck so far this week, with his Supersport bike also blowing up on the top of the mountain pretty much, forcing him to get a Marshall's KTM enduro bike and ride it back to the start-finish line, basically. Obviously not on the racetrack, on country roads, and making his way back and then sprinting the final couple of miles. So it just shows what he's made of and shows really what the Isle of Man TT is all about. And that is proper light grassroots racing almost.
So I may be completely wrong here, but he was on Dunlop tyres. Yeah. And that was the same at the Northwest, which also had problems. Has any, because I know there were about 4 riders at the Northwest that were affected with the Dunlop tyres. So is Davy Todd been the only unfortunate victim at the TT, it seems?
Yeah, it seems so far. And well, hopefully he is the only person that's going to have this bad luck. But Dunlop did make a change, and that was any Dunlop runner would have to use a treaded rear race tyre instead of the slicks. They were not allowed any Dunlop slicks to be used at the TT, which is understandable. So David Todd used one of them. It was actually his rear tyre that had the issues, so maybe that was just one bad tyre, because the top 3 finishers, I also believe, were on Dunlop, so it was a very mixed picture with the whole tyre situation. But I do believe as well Dean Harrison has went to Metzeler, and Michael Dunlop went into the TT with Metzelers after what happened at the Northwest, and since have went back to Dunlop. So yeah, the whole tyre thing's super mixed at the moment.
I mean, we've said the name a lot, but Dunlop, Supersport race winner. I think everyone is happy with that, with how historic his whole family are with the TT. Obviously his uncle being Joey Dunlop, and Michael Dunlop's 20th TT win, we said it earlier. And you know, he looked good in multiple races this weekend. Supersport, obviously he won, podium on the Superbike, 5th place in the Superstock, and the Super Twin. I know you said you didn't get a chance to watch it, but he was fighting for the lead with Hickman until the last lap, when I haven't seen what it was, because obviously we came on air shortly after, but I believe a bike took him out of 2nd place, which is disappointing for Michael when he was on for his 3rd podium of the week.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about the Super Twin race, although I never got to watch it this afternoon. That I believe there was some mechanical issue that forced them to get black flagged from the race until they made some adjustments or something on his motorcycle. So if anyone's watching and knows exactly what the issue was, let us know down in the comments. But the Supersport race from Dunlop was, it was sensational, really. Him and Dean Harrison took it to the absolute last lap. They took each other to the limit. I mean, Dunlop set a 129 mile per hour lap on a Supersport bike, which is, I can't even explain how crazy that is. That's a new lap record for a Supersport machine. And 10 or so years ago, that was a great lap of a Superbike, and now we're doing it on Supersports.
It's just the whole Isle of Man TT is coming on so far with the machinery as well. But one man who's been there and done that, John McGuinness, he's still going. He's soldiering on, what's he now? I think 50. I think he turned 50 this year, and he's back with the Honda Racing UK team, Factory Honda, 5th place in the Superbike class. You can't knock that.
Yeah, I'm running a special livery, which was great to see from Honda. It was a great little tip of the hat. I mean, it had every single TT it had multiple of his TTs on a little slide along the bike. And it was great to see him still racing. It's great that he's back this year running the number 1 plate. And one person, not only McGuinness, that has impressed me this year on the Honda, but his teammate Glenn Irwin has been something else. For a rookie, he set the new lap record for a newcomer around the TT with a 129.8 mile per hour lap, which I believe is Peter Hittman's newcomer lap record, which is, it shows great things to come, I would say.
Yeah, Glenn Irwin, 8th place in the Superbike race. Obviously, still more to come from them in the senior TT race later on this week, I believe, on Friday. But it's been very good. I was just flicking through social media that night. I think he did beat Hickman's lap record from when he was a newcomer. So Glenn Irwin's obviously arrived with a point to prove. I did think at the start of the season after Silverstone that potentially at BSB they might pull him out of the TT if Alton and Donington went as well as they did at Silverstone. Then I was really hoping for a way that Glenn would still get to go, even if he'd done well, because he seemed really up for it in interviews, and he's spent a lot of time with John McGuinness as well to learn parts of the track. Obviously, they have so much ground to memorise, every manhole cover, everything, and Glenn's doing a top job.
Yeah, he's going about it the right way as well. He's completely different. I mean, it's such a hard thing to be a good short circuit rider and a good road racer. And it looked like Peter Hittman is the best rider that's ever done it, to be honest. But Glenn Irwin, he's going about it the right way. He's completely got a different mindset to the roads. He's slowly built himself up. You've seen his lap times from the start of the week, which was, I think, about 122, to the end of practice when it was 128. So he's slowly just building his way up lap by lap. And each time he's getting overtaken, he's using it as an opportunity just to learn and realise that these boys know exactly what they're doing. So why not learn off them and learn off the best, such as Lee Johnston? So, it's great to see. And it's great to see such an established rider trying something new as well, which, and stepping out his comfort zone, which we don't always see. It's great to see. And the TT is such a challenging course, as you mentioned, 37.73 miles. It takes quite a long time to get your head around that, and every single lump and bump, as you mentioned, every type of corner you can ever think of, and even some corners that you can ever think of at a side of a mountain going 200 miles per hour. It's the TT, something special and something that's loved by people all over the world, and people like me that's never even seen it yet in real life.
Yeah, it's great to have it back. Obviously, I mentioned earlier I haven't been watching it, but I know you have been. What's the coverage been like on the service they're providing this year?
Yeah, the coverage on the TT Plus website and the app has been pretty good, to be honest. This first couple of nights there was quite a lot of technical difficulties, as you would expect with such a large course, and the first ever time doing this in the history. So yeah, it was great to see that they're trying something new as well with the coverage and giving us different pictures, different angles each night. You would see them trying something new with a helicopter camera, different angle of the helicopter camera. And by the time we got racing, the coverage was almost like you'd see an ITV, obviously minus the onboard cameras, which we can't get live. And the production value is great, and it's great value for the money. It's £15 for 2 weeks of TT coverage, the full race, full interviews, in-depth analysis by people who have done the racing themselves. You know, Horst Sager, Jenny Tinmouth, established riders on it just to be able to talk and tell us exactly what the riders are facing. So, yeah, the coverage is good, and hopefully it's something that continues. And we also have the ITV4 coverage for every single night for people who can't watch it live and are busy during the day. So the TT is at, well, the best coverage that we've ever seen it for new fans, and hopefully it's going to be a way to keep road racing alive and attract new fans to it.
Yeah, obviously there's still more TT to come this week with tomorrow's race of the Monster Energy Supersport TT Race 2, which has been delayed from today. I imagine from weather conditions. I did hear that it started raining over at the TT, and obviously dangerous enough as it is in the dry, let alone letting them do it in the wet. So Supersport race tomorrow, who would you put money on, Lewis? Sorry.
Yeah, the Supersport has been close all week. I'm going to say Michael Dunlop once again. I mean, I don't know, it's so hard to say. I mean, Peter Hickman, he's got the Triumph 765 motor inside of his bike this year, but with the new regulations, he's a bit down in top speed because they don't want to make the bike too powerful, and you know, so it's going to take some time to get balanced. So the ECU is locked, so there's only so much they can do. So the bike's a bit down in power. So with the bike, and maybe next year with the bike, a bit more straight line speed, with a bit more balanced drills, with the knowledge that they're gaining from this year, I would probably say Peter Hickman can also be a contender for a race win in the Super Sport class, which could we see 6 wins or maybe 5 wins again in 1 week? It's great to see. The TT is in great health. There's so much talent all the way down the field.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think Dunlop's going to take it again tomorrow. But I'd like to see Lee Johnston on the podium. That's obviously in the British Supersport class as well, doing well there. So it'll be nice to see him stood up there, obviously on his Yamaha, the Ashcourt Yamaha, I still believe, which I think is one of the... It's very simple design, but one of the best looking designs that are on a motorbike that I like. The yellow and blue, it works nicely, but I'd like to see him up there. Obviously, McGuinness is in it as well on the Honda. You'd love to see him up there. It probably won't happen, but you'd love to see McGuinness take a win in what could be his final TT. Maybe he doesn't want it to be, but
yeah, I mean, McGuinness has never really been known to be that great on the Supersport machinery. Obviously, you know, his size and his weight and his aerodynamics doesn't really suit a Supersport bike. But yeah, I agree with what you say. I mean, Lee Johnston has been looking great all week, really, and he had a bad pit stop, I believe, in race 1, which kind of took him out of contention. So yeah, it's really left everyone to wonder what could be for him, and he gets another shot with the Supersport class in 2 races. So I think everyone is really excited with Lee Johnston, with the Supersport class in general.
Obviously, there's still the big race to come on Friday of the Milwaukee Senior TT, which I think, even though Hickman's won 3 races so far, 3 races, so
3, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Milwaukee Senior TT, though, that's the big one. That's the one that Hickman will want to win the most out of all of them.
Yeah, it's the one that means the most to the riders, shall we say, because obviously the super stock race is the one that means the most to the manufacturers, just with the bikes basically being bog standard and some new suspension put in. So that's really the class that we get to see what bike is the best. But yeah, the Senior TT's coming up, and we've missed it really for 3 years now, so we're just going to have to wait and see who wins it. Peter Hickman's looking strong. Dunlop obviously is on the Suzuki. He's no longer on the PBM, which we're expecting to see. We're expecting to see a Ducati back at the TT, which personally I was really excited to see what a Ducati would go like around there. Full chat. But Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It looked like he wasn't too comfortable on that build base Michael Dunlop race in Suzuki at the start of the week, but hopefully they can get things ironed out for the senior.
Yeah, I'm going to say his name again. John McGuinness as well is. I'm rooting for him. I really am.
Yeah.
I really hope he can do it. Glenn Irwin as well, someone who is going to go well. Dominic Herbertson as well has been going well. Obviously, part of Chrissy Rouse's Chasing the Racing podcast. Obviously, he's been doing well for his time at the TT with some good results.
Yeah, he has. I mean, Dominic really came. Well, first realised Dominic when the Netflix TT documentary came out, Nature of Sport or something along that lines. It was called. That was about the L-Man TT. It was based around Dominic Herbertson mainly and what it's like to be a privateer at a TT. If no one's ever watched, if you've never watched that, I would certainly give it a watch. It's a great insight to the TT, and it follows a couple of riders, so you can really see the comparison to the privateer such as Dominic to the likes of James Hillier, who on the time was on the Bournemouth Kawasaki team. So yeah, I really like Dominic. He's got a great character and a great personality. He's a laugh to listen to on the Chasing the Racing podcast, and yeah, he's looking strong, and so is Jamie Coward actually on all classes he's really in. The Superbike, he got a top 10 in that, I believe, or just out the top 10. I think around 11th place maybe, which is still a highly respectable result for Jamie Coward on his Yamaha, and yeah, he's going to be wanting a good result, and so is James Hillier, of course, who I just mentioned there, who's on the Yamaha, the Rich Energy Yamaha this year. He's not had the best of TT weeks so far, so there's still one more race that means the most, so I definitely think we can see something special. And something special, as you mentioned, from John McGuinness, maybe something like Joey Dunlop did, where he did that last big bike race at a TT and he won it. He absolutely blitzed them all. He just knew he was going to go for that victory, and he had Robert in the pit for it. It's just something special to watch. So hopefully we can see something magical on Friday.
Well, obviously next week we'll talk more about what happened at the end of the TT, but this weekend, World Superbikes is back on, and it's been a good championship so far between Bautista, Jonathan Rea. Toprak's not far behind, but Misano this weekend. I know you said Imola. Misano this weekend. What are we thinking, Lewis?
Yeah, it's gonna be a big weekend for a lot of riders. There's a lot of riders that are going to look strong. Obviously, we're expecting the usuals: Bautista, Rea, and Toprak to be fighting each other to the absolute limit. But yeah, I mean, as we talked about before the show started, Ruben Rinaldi has always went well at Misano, so we can see something special. I mean, Italian bike, Italian rider, and technically the Italian track. I mean, yeah, we can see something special this weekend, and I think we would see some passion and hopefully some good crowd numbers for this weekend's racing. And I think you can agree that Jonathan Rea is going to be wanting to try and, well, I would say improving his results from Estoril, because Estoril, he looked a bit out of shape and not like we usually see Jonathan. So he's going to be wanting for a far smoother, cleaner weekend where hopefully he can try and control the race like we have seen in the past with Jonathan at Misano. He's also got some cracking results there. I remember a race of Jonathan Rea and Chaz Davis actually at Misano a couple of years back, so that's one that sticks in my head of Jonathan Rea being quick at Misano as he is everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you see Jonathan looked a bit out of shape at Estoril. He still took 2 race wins, and it just shows that Jonathan Rea, he's a class rider. He is the best that's done it in World Superbikes, and he's always got to be one to watch out for. We said him as well, Bautista. Misano, the year Bautista was on there on Ducati, I seem to remember it didn't go very well from my memory.
No, I don't think it did.
I have memories of him crashing out, which was a shame for Bautista this year, but he seems to have potentially turned it around this year. What's that already this season? 4 race wins, I believe, and he's been on the podium at every race, I think.
Yeah, it's had a great start to the season, but as we did see whenever he was with Ducati, he also had a great start to the season then, and he kind of just, as the season progressed and as it looked like the championship was almost wrapped up, he just threw it down the road really, and Jonathan Rea made a magical comeback. And it's all experience, and Bautista does have that experience down his back pocket, so I think he's definitely going to use that for his advantage. And at Misano, it's such a technical track. I mean, Misano's a special place for not just Italian people, not just Italian racers and Italian manufacturers, but for just every rider, really. It's a special place to be. It's historic. There's so much incredible races that has happened at Misano. So I think all riders, of course, are going to win, and Top Rat's going to want and try and just get a string of results in, which is what he needs after switching to the 2022 electronics finally.
Yeah, another rider I've just been looking at in the championship as well is Iker Lecuona. He's got experience around the track from being in the Grand Prix paddock. He's started the season well on the Honda. He's taken me by surprise. Both of them have, Lecuona and Vieja, both coming over from the Grand Prix paddock. Didn't expect them to start how they have. Obviously, Lecuona has taken a podium in Assen in race 2, but I wasn't expecting the Honda to go as well as it has at the start of the season. I'm sure Leon Camier will be happy with how his 2 new Spanish boys are doing, and Lecuona could be one to watch. He has experience around the track. A good result will be on the cards again.
Yeah, I mean, this year Honda's been looking great, actually. Compared to the last 1 or 2 seasons, Honda's been getting up there, and it looks like they finally turned a corner on how to set up this bike for the World Championship electronics. Because it was whenever the bike first came out, it was such a strange thing, because we've seen it straight away be competitive in championships like BSB, but then in World Superbikes it was doing absolutely nothing. So it's great to see that it's finally turned a corner. I believe this year they've also changed their suspension manufacturer, so maybe they're starting to find what suits the bikes and what suits the riders that are obviously coming over from Grand Prix. But another rider who is on a new bike for this year and will want better results is, well, I think you can guess it, Scott Redding.
I had a feeling you'd go that way. Scott Redding, yeah, obviously Ducati to BMW, which could probably agree with me here, Lewis, and say that it's been not the start that Scott would have wanted by far. He's jumped over to this bike, 11th in the standings. He has had a 5th place in Assen. A couple people did crash out in front of him, and it was a bit of a mayhem race, that race 2 in Assen, but he stayed on the bike and got a 5th place, but a best of 7th in Estoril and a 9th place in Aragon was his best result there. 15th place, sorry. I was looking at the wrong week, but it's not been the start of the season Scott would want. It's not been the start of the season BMW would have wanted, because their top rider is Loris Baz, who's in 10th place. Not their factory boys. He's on the Bonovo BMW. So I expected more from Baz as well, to be honest, with the start of this season. But sticking with Redding, Misano, he knows it. He's had podiums there in Grand Prix, on the Ducati. He's been around there. He's been going to Misano for years. So you'd hope that, Estoril, he went there when he was younger. Aragon, he was going there in the Grand Prix class as well, but it was his first weekend on the BMW. He took 4th places in Misano last year. Maybe we could see some decent results for Scott. I don't think he'll get a podium, but could definitely crack up towards that top 5 position.
Yeah, I think that as well. I mean, BMW, it's not what they want. There's no other way to put it. I mean, Michael van der Mark is, of course, still out with him re-breaking his leg. So straight away, pretty much first 5 minutes back on track, he broke his leg again. So it's not a season they wanted. So as you mentioned, I was just about to mention myself, with Loris Baz being the top BMW, it's going to slow down their development with them only having one factory rider, full-time factory rider that is, going to every single round and be able to give back consistent feedback on the bike. So yeah, it's going to be, I don't see light at the end of the tunnel just yet for Scott. It's going to take a lot of time. I mean, I think before this move even happened, I think we all knew it was going to be tough. I think surely somewhat of Scott inside his head thought this is going to be a tough, long process on moving to his bike and team, which it's not a terrible bike, but it's not the best bike on the grid at the moment. So it's going to take some time. And Scott is a strong rider mentally, so I do think they will eventually get there, but it's just depending on how that team dynamic stays.
Another rider as well who's been, at the start of the season, I was hyping him up as someone who could challenge towards the front. Garrett Gerloff, he's been very underwhelming. Obviously didn't take part in Estoril, but his best result being a 7th place in Assen. But it's just been a little bit of a slow start to Garrett's, and he was very good in pre-season testing, watching him there, and he was up towards with the factory boys. And I was thinking this, could be Garrett's season to prove himself after, as well, what was a little bit of a disappointing season last year, where I seem to remember there were talks that he might get kicked out of Yamaha, with having very, very strong words with him, especially after taking out Toprak in Assen last year, and he's just not really looked the same since.
No, he really hasn't. I mean, the first time I noticed Garrett is actually at whenever he replaced Valentino Rossi for two free practice sessions on the Friday of the Valencian Grand Prix of 2021. So yeah, I mean, he really impressed me then, and he really impressed me all last year. It just looked like these silly mistakes were creeping in, and it probably is, well, it's probably got to him, to be honest. Whenever you get your seat threatened over taking out riders, which is somewhat understandable, especially whenever it is your teammate on the same manufacturer, you can completely understand why they would be super upset over that, but it looks like he's lost confidence, and 12th in the stands is not where we're expecting to be, and yeah, there's a lot of ground to make up, and not just him, but his teammate Toprak, which is, it's unlikely. It's looking unlikely as the rounds are getting on that Toprak's going to be fighting for the championship win by the end of the season. So he's going to need some good results for himself. And it was actually announced, talking about World Superbikes and MotoGP earlier, that I don't think Toprak's going to be heading to the MotoGP paddock in the next year, with obviously Yamaha no longer having a satellite team. So it's a massive blow, I would personally say, for his career for Toprak. I was really excited to see him on the MotoGP bikes, and now Toprak really needs to stay in his prime in World Superbikes to hopefully get a shot in MotoGP when it's available.
Here's my question for you then, Lewis. If you're Toprak Raskatioglu as it stands, and the Yamaha doesn't appear to have improved, and Franco still isn't doing the business next year, and his contract comes to an end at the end of next season, and you were offered a ride for 2024, would you take it?
That is a question and a half. I'll give you that one. It really depends on what he wants of his career, because if he moves to MotoGP and starts straight away just getting that respectful result, being second Yamaha, beating riders who have been in the class for quite a while now, I definitely think that's going to boost his career and potentially get someone like Ducati or Aprilia looking at him for a potential move. But yeah, the thing is, if he stays in World Superbikes, as the Yamaha doesn't look too competitive in MotoGP with the other riders, we may potentially see like what happened to Jonathan Rea, and that's just stuck in World Superbikes, winning championships and being super successful, but never getting a full-time go at MotoGP, which would be a massive shame to see for another World Superbike champion. I believe Luke may have frozen. Oh no, he's back.
Oh, it's back. Sorry, my Wi-Fi completely dropped out then. Blame the countryside Wi-Fi. But from what you were saying about if the Yamaha hasn't improved, and that's all I heard. But yeah, if I was Toprak, I don't know what you said at the end of yours, but if I was Toprak, I don't think I'd make the move. But then there is the risk of, especially if it hasn't improved, but there is the risk of being a Jonathan Rea, like you said, of never really getting that opportunity to have a go at MotoGP. And when Jonathan Rea did, he was decent, but Toprak, you have the two sides, don't you? The do it sooner rather than later, so you don't get caught up in like the ageist championship that is MotoGP, or go to Yamaha, risk it, and then not ruin your career, but ruin your MotoGP chances. Because if you're not doing it on a Yamaha, and Fabio is, a lot of people will look at that and be like, well, I don't want you on my bike. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, basically word for word there. I mean, MotoGP is a championship now that seems just to be getting younger and younger as the years go on, and it's getting to a point now where Moto2 and Moto3 riders are almost getting forced into MotoGP as the championship. We're seeing 19, 20-year-olds come into MotoGP and make the move prematurely almost, with Darren Binder's actually a great example of him making the move from Moto3 to MotoGP, although he is 24, which even in MotoGP now, 24 to make the move to MotoGP is seeming quite old. So MotoGP is in quite a strange place right now where we seem to be really attracted to these young guns rather than waiting for riders to mature a bit more and develop their skills a bit more. So yeah, I completely agree with what you said, word for word, for Top Rack there.
My Wi-Fi went out again during that, so I apologise about that. But also, after Mazzano is the British round for World Superbikes, Donington Park, and I believe we're meant to have British champion Taron McKenzie on the grid. So there'll be a lot of pressure on Taron going into that round. Obviously, he's just come back from injury. Some good time off now for Taron to continue his recovery. But what would you expect from Taron looking forward for the World Superbike season? What would be a good result, in your opinion, for Taz at Donington?
Well, there's a lot of factors involved in it. I mean, especially with his ankle injury is the main thing that's making me change my results for him and, well, my hope for him at the British World Superbike round. I think anywhere, if you can get inside the points, that is a highly respectable result for a wild card. I mean, I think 1 or 2 years ago, I seen Luke Mossey actually do a wild card for World Superbikes, and he had some pretty good results on a privateer team. So I just can't remember where Luke finished, but if you can get anywhere around there, I think, yeah, anywhere in the points, I think is quite respectable for him, especially after his injury. And we're expecting, obviously, to see him at Assen doing the wild card, but his ankle injury obviously held him back from that. And we want to see Taz in his finest form to go into the world stage. And yeah, do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you expect for Taz?
Yeah. I completely agree. It's obviously he's lives in Ashby de la Zouch, which is near Donington Park, and it's almost his home race now for where he lives. So you'd hope that Taz has great circuit knowledge of Donington. We saw that with when he came back still injured and was finishing great in BSB race 2. I think it was 6th or 5th place. It was around that mark. And if Taz can carry that over to appearing in Worlds, obviously not as high because the level is that little bit more. And I think he's going to be with the McCann's team, but I'm not sure. Are they running the full World Superbike like specs, like factory spec, or are they slightly lower, or don't we know that yet?
I don't really know that, but obviously they will be running the World Superbike, which is going to be a whole thing for him to get his mind around, to be honest. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a learning curve for Taz over the weekend, and yeah, I think he's just got to enjoy it. I think the main thing out of the weekend, he can't expect fighting for any crazy results. You just got to enjoy the experience and learn something new from these world-class riders. And I was actually just looking at results from 2021 Donington Park, and Luke Mossey finished 16th, which is a pretty respectable result in the privateer team for World Superbike. So anywhere around that mark, as I said, fighting for there or thereabouts in the points, I think he should be delighted with, to be honest.
Because as well with Taz, when he appears in World Superbikes in just over a month, I believe, at Donington Park, he could be fighting for a ride as well for 2023 in World Superbikes, which could be replacing Kota Nazani in the satellite Yamaha team, who, in all honesty, hasn't been very impressive his whole time in World Superbikes, which is a shame. I'd thought he'd come on more this season, but only 2-point scoring finishes. And Taz, if he can outperform Kota Nazani and let's say both the long distance races, because the sprint races, it's different for World Superbikes. Yeah. So if he can outperform him, even if it's by one position, then he's definitely got his name on the map with Yamaha World Superbikes.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. It was a big shame actually this year that he's not even in World Superbikes. I think we're all somewhat expect them to get that seat, but everything kind of just went askew. The seats were taken up and he had nowhere to really go but return to BSB. But yeah, I mean, I think actually the Superpole race may be his best shot, just with, obviously at Donington Park, whenever he was racing at BSB, he was complaining a lot with arm pump and him struggling with having to change his riding style with the motorcycle because of his injury, that the shorter race might actually be perfect for him, although it's not as credible as what the longer races, as you said. It's definitely going to be what he can show with raw pace in the first couple laps.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And obviously, finally, let's to round the show out, let's go to World Supersports. It's been very competitive this year between Dominic Agata and Baldassari, and also Buliger in there on the Ducati. How do you see it going at Misano? Because obviously, Buliger, Baldassari will want to win on home soil, but Dominic Agata seems again on another level this season.
Yeah, Dominic Agata is just absolutely on it. Not even in World Supersport, not just on World Supersport, I should say. In Moto E as well. He's run 2 championships at once, and he's somehow doing it in both. I mean, it's 2 completely different riding styles, and he's almost carrying on from last year, Dominic Agata, of straight away just going for the results and going for race wins, and it's pure pace. And as the season develops as well, we've got to keep in mind that Buliger is on the new Ducati for the Supersport regulations. So as the season develops, there'll be slight changes within the rules to make them a bit more balanced. So it could potentially play in Buliger's hands towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with you. Buliger on the Ducati, he's been looking strong, couple podiums this season. Obviously, you can't count Chananchu out on the Kawasaki. If you had to make a prediction, who would you go for in World Supersport?
I have to go for Dominic Agata. I just can't look past him. He's just been so dominant. It's not just been race wins there and then or some podiums. It's just been every single session pretty much. He's just been banging in the laps, banging in top positions, and he's doing it with ease. He doesn't even look like he's trying that hard, which is something that is very difficult to do. It's almost like what we've seen with British Supersport of Rory Skinner. They just look like the bikes as one with them, and they're just getting the results, and it's just perfect. And yeah, I definitely have to go with Agata.
Yeah, Agata, another level. Like we were saying, it's World Supersports competitive. It's looking like it's coming back to where it should be as a championship, with the introduction of Ducati and obviously MV still being in there, and Triumph Triumph, I believe, have gone over as well. Yeah,
and it's 765 now. It's
looking competitive, and it's where it should be to match World Superbikes.
Yeah, it's great to see the class finally alive again. It was becoming just a Yamaha show. If you weren't on a Yamaha, you weren't fighting for victories or podiums. And there was 1 or 2 Kawasaki's on the grid that could somewhat keep up with them. And yeah, it wasn't the greatest thing to see for World Championship racing, but now the class is healthy as ever. We have bikes of all different sorts, and certainly going to quirkier tracks such as Donington Park, which isn't like these European circuits that's usually quite fast and flowing. We could see maybe the twins or a different type of engine come into play rather than just the straight inline 4 Yamahas.
Well, Lewis, I think we've talked all we can about bikes for the last nearly 2 hours. But this weekend, the Junior GP Round 3 at Catalunya will be live streamed, and we'll have commentating 2 previous presenters of the Superbike show and Fab commentators, Liam Hodgins and Tristan Finocchiaro. And also this weekend, check out live race coverage of the Road to MotoGP Series Fab Racing all weekend from Ellis Park in Norfolk. And Lewis Ray, you will be commentating as well this weekend. Yeah,
it's looking like great weather right now. I think it's in the 22 degrees or something for the weekend, so it's going to be a hot one at Ella Park, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And the Junior GP, it's great to see previous presenters and Fab commentators go on to do great things in the Junior GP and associated MotoGP championships.
Good stuff. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week on the Superbike show.
This is Motorsport Radio.
1, 2, 3.
the conversation. Contact the show on Twitter, on Facebook, and on our website, Motorsport Radio.